the real-time computer on their desk has frozen. Court reporters indicate that after the tripod fell on this court reporter's machine that it's been freezing.
Is yours working around?
No, I don't believe so. The testimony was rather brief, though.
Yeah. What they do before they have real time? They get loose.
Slight technical problem here.
Okay. How long have you been working at that travel agency?
1 year.
1 year?
Yes.
And during that year, you've learned to book flights on to Salvador?
Yes.
And what airlines do you book flights to Salvador with?
United, TACA, Aviateca, LAXA. Those are the most that I use.
Mm-hmm. And Salvador, that's a pretty popular destination place. You book a lot of flights to Salvador?
Yes.
Do you have any records of the reservations you made for Rosa Lopez on February 15th?
No, because we changed the same reservation.
So you don't have any paperwork to show that you made that reservation on February 15th, is that right?
That's right.
And ordinarily, when you make reservations for a flight to Salvador, you fill out some kind of a ticket form, don't you?
Yes and no, because when you know, you just go straight to the computer and you just fill in all the information directly to the computer.
Right. And you type it right into the computer and that goes straight to the airline, doesn't it?
Correct.
Okay, and so you would have done that for Rosa Lopez on February 15th, wouldn't you?
Yes.
And so you should be able to pull up some record if you wanted to print out the activity that you did for the month of February. Mm-hmm. That printout should show a reservation that you made for Rosa Lopez on February 15th, isn't it?
Not if you cancel it or if you make changes to the reservation.
Okay, if you canceled it, then wouldn't you have some record of the fact that it was canceled, that the reservation was made and canceled?
I don't think so.
How many times have you booked flights for Rosa Lopez in the past year to Salvador?
To be honest, I don't know the exact number, but probably 2 or 3.
Okay, and when did you book those?
One that I remember was in November.
Okay, and when in November?
The date, middle of November.
You don't remember the date?
No.
And did she go on that? Did she actually go to Salvador on that occasion?
Yes, because she had the ticket.
And what airline did she fly on?
At that time was, I believe, TACA or United.
And she came back after that? And did she fly again?
After she came back, no.
Did she go earlier in the year?
What I remember, no.
So she only, from the time that you've been working at that agency, during the year of '94, she went once, and she went in November. Is that right?
Yes.
Do you have any, well, let me ask you this. In this month of February, how many reservations have you made in general for El Salvador?
For Rosa?
No.
For
in
general. It's hard to say. Over 1,000.
Over 1,000?
Yes.
Over 1,000. Do you remember the names of all the people you booked those to?
Just few.
Okay. How is it you remember Rosa Lopez?
Because she calls me on the phone, and she always calls me to find out how the price is, and she wants to come and get the ticket when the price is down.
When did you first get the call to come to court today?
This morning at about 12.
And who called you?
Pat, I think
Pat?
his name, yes.
Pat McKenna?
Yes, I think so.
And did he tell you that he wanted you to come in and testify that you booked Rosa Lopez a flight on February 15th?
Well, do you understand the question, ma'am?
Would you repeat the question?
I'm sorry.
Would you repeat the question?
Yes. I can. I can't. Did Mr. McKenna tell you that he wanted you to come in and testify that Rosa Lopez booked a flight to Salvador with you on February 15th?
No, I don't think so.
Well, what did he tell you?
He told me that he wanted me to come to court, and he asked me questions about her, that when she was leaving, and
What did he ask you?
he asked me what airline she was leaving, at what time.
Did he ask if you remembered that she had booked a flight with you earlier this month?
Yes, yeah, I think so. He asked me.
Is that what he asked you?
Yes.
And did he also ask you whether you remembered canceling that reservation?
Yes, when Rosa called, we made a we usually make reservations, and the passenger changes her mind. In this case, like in Rosa, she changed her mind for the 15th of February, then we book a round-trip reservation.
And who told you the date was February 15th?
Well, Rosa.
Rosa, she told you?
Yeah.
When did she tell you that? Today?
Today, and also when she called, that was, I think, beginning of February.
When did you talk to Rosa today?
What time? You mean what time?
Yes, what time?
It was about noontime.
Read back. I'm sorry.
Certainly. Madam Reporter.
What time after it was about noontime?
And you spoke to Rosa Lopez on the telephone?
Yeah. Yes.
And after that, did you speak to Mr. McKenna?
You mean Pat? Pat?
Yes.
Yes.
So first you spoke to Rosa Lopez, is that right?
Right.
And then you spoke to Pat McKenna, is that right?
Yes.
When Rosa talked to you, did she tell you that she wanted you to come in and testify that she had booked a flight earlier this month for Salvador?
Well, she's always talking about her flights, and I believe she did.
Well, but when she talked to you today,
Yes.
did she ask you to come to court and testify that you booked a flight for her to Salvador earlier this month?
Yes.
And did she tell you what date she wanted you to testify to?
Well, when she called, she told me she wanted to leave on the 15th of February.
No, I'm talking about your conversation with her today.
Oh, today? Yeah, she reminded me about that.
She reminded you.
Yes.
She told you to say that it was on February 15th when you came to court. Is that right? Object, Your Honor.
Object to the form of that question.
Your Honor.
Overruled.
Ms. Davis.
Overruled. Why don't you restate the question?
And did she tell you to say it was on February 15th that you
Yes.
booked the flight for her?
Yeah, she reminded me, yes.
She told you to come in and tell that to the court. Is that right?
Object, that's not what she said. She said she
Overruled.
reminded her.
Overruled.
She-
I heard,
she-
counsel, I heard the testimony. Let's finish this. Yes.
Did you hear?
Yeah, she reminded me.
Okay. Because you didn't know that on your own.
Not really, no.
Now, isn't it true that you have actually booked a flight to El Salvador for Rosa Lopez due to leave on March the 15th and return on March the 20th?
Yes.
And which airline is that?
United.
United. Can you tell us how much that ticket is?
At this moment, it's about $452, including taxes.
Is that round trip?
That's a round trip.
Good deal.
I'm sorry, what was that amount again?
$452.
All right, that's a round trip fare?
Yes.
And what's the one-way fare?
About 320 or 315, including taxes.
Mm-hmm. And did you tell Mr. Cochran about this round trip ticket you booked for Rosa Lopez in March to and from El Salvador?
Yes.
You told him about that, did you?
Yes.
And when did you tell him about that?
Today.
Today, when you talked to him at noon?
Yes.
Okay, now has that ticket been paid for, that round trip ticket?
No.
Do you have a requirement that it be paid for within 24 hours of the reservation?
Yes. To keep the fare, the price of the fare.
To keep the price of the fare. But the reservation still stands, isn't that right?
That's right.
So as of now, Rosa Lopez is scheduled to fly out to El Salvador on March the 15th and return on March the 20th to Los Angeles. Isn't that right?
As of right now, we made a change. She's leaving tomorrow night, one-way ticket.
And when did that change occur?
Today,
What time today?
and around noontime, or after I talked to her.
After she called you and asked you to come to court?
Yes.
And that was after noon?
Yes, when I talked to her.
I have nothing further.
Mr. Cochran?
Ms. Iida, the reservations that you referred to that were for March, whatever date it was in March, when were those reservations made?
Would you repeat the question?
The reservations that you were just talking to Ms. Clark about that you'd said were made like in March, that was a round trip for $400+?
Yes.
You know when those reservations were made?
21st of February.
All right, and then with regard to that, the reservations that were made at the 1st of February,
Yes.
when was that? That was a round trip ticket or a one-way ticket?
The first time we made the reservation was a one-way ticket.
All right. And with Ms. Clark asked you some questions about whether or not your memory was reminded or refreshed by Rosa Lopez. Do you recall that you actually made those reservations for the 1st of February?
I recall.
All right.
Yeah.
And what's your best recollection of the date that Ms. Lopez was supposed to leave to go from LAX to El Salvador?
Well, 15th of February.
All right. And then she did not take that trip, obviously. Is that correct?
Correct.
Then with regard to the reservations that she asked you about on March, what was the date, do you recall?
March I'm sorry, what is that?
What was the date in March?
When she wants to leave?
Yes.
I believe it's 13th of March.
All right. And do you know whether or not that ticket's ever been paid for?
Those tickets have not been paid for.
They've not been paid for?
No,
And they were made on February 21st?
they were made on February 21st.
And if you don't pay for them within 24 hours, what happens to the tickets or the reservations?
The reservation remains there, and the price may go up or may go down.
All right. The only way you reserve the actual fare is you pay for it within 24 hours of the date that you make the reservation. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And the 21st of February was last Tuesday. Is that correct?
Yes, I think
And
so.
Now, you indicated in response to Ms. Clark's questions that Ms. Lopez has asked you, and she now has reservations on a flight leaving here tomorrow night?
Correct.
And what's that fare?
One-way fare for tomorrow night will be $297 and 14, about $320, something like that.
$320?
Yes.
And when does that have to be paid for by?
24 hours or tomorrow.
All right, so it was made today, so you have to pay for it either in 24 hours or before
Tomorrow.
the flight?
Before the flight.
All right. The other reservations for later in March, she'll take whatever she can get if she tries to use those later. Is that correct? If she hasn't paid for them now?
Say that again?
Sure. With regard to that, she's not paid for those tickets. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. And so the reservations will still stand, but there are no tickets. Is that right?
That's right.
All right. And that was made on February 21st.
That's right. That's correct.
And that was made after the reservations you testified about that were made in the first part of February. Is that correct?
Yes.
For February 15th?
February, sometime in beginning of February.
All right. Do you know of anything that unusual happened in Rosa Lopez's life on February 21st? Did she talk to you about that at all?
Objection, objection.
Can you answer that? She knows?
Hearsay.
Anything unusual? That's hearsay? You
Did she tell you anything?
can answer yes or no. Did Rosa Lopez...
What's irrelevant?
I can link it up. May I proceed?
I asked the question,
All right.
but I'm suspicious.
Don't be suspicious.
All right.
Did Rosa Lopez tell you anything at all when she made the reservations on February 21st, if you recall?
Thank you. No.
All right. Were those reservations made through you?
Yes.
All right. Thank you very kindly. Thank you.
Ms. Clark?
Yes, very briefly. What time in the morning does your agency open?
9 in the morning.
9 in the morning. And as of 9 this morning,
Yes.
the reservations you had for Rosa Lopez were a round-trip ticket to El Salvador and to return to Los Angeles in March of this year. Is that right?
That's right.
Were you watching these proceedings in court this morning?
No.
You didn't. Do you have a television set in your agency?
No.
Were you listening to it on the radio?
No.
The tickets from February 21st for March were never paid for. Is that correct?
That's correct.
In the past,
Hold on.
Rosa Lopez, has she made reservations in the past, and they've also not been paid for
Objection
by the time of flight?
Overruled. You can answer the question.
What's the question?
In the past, has Rosa Lopez made other reservations other than the one in February, the early part of February, that was for February 15th, in which she did not take that particular flight?
You mean she made a reservation
It didn't go.
and didn't go? Yes.
That's happened in the past?
It happened in the past.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you, Vic.
Okay.
Ms. Clark? All right, Ms. Iida, thank you very much for coming. You're now excused. Mr. Cochran, anything else for the, on behalf of the moving party?
I'm not a witness at this point.
All right. Anything on behalf of the opponents? Sure. Mr. Darden? All right. I'll hear argument from the proponent.
Thank you, Your Honor. The court has heard the testimony and, as usual, has been patient with regard to the evidence that's been presented. The court has for its consideration Ms. Rosa Maria Lopez, a lady who has relevant testimony to give in this case. She's an important witness for the defense, I think, by all accounts. That's why both sides are fighting, it seems, so vigorously. The question is whether or not the proponent has met their burden with regard to showing that there's a reasonable likelihood that she's going to leave this jurisdiction. The evidence to me seems to be clear, Your Honor. Ms. Lopez is a woman whose face has been broadcast, even through counsel's examination, literally around the world by virtue of the great interest in this case. I suppose that the individuals who framed 1335 probably didn't have this case in mind, as did, I think, anybody could have had this case in mind. Here's a lady who's a housekeeper, who has no other means of support, whose family has been torn asunder by the fact that she witnessed something that will bear on Mr. Simpson's innocence. And that may not be fair to her, but she has acted, it seems to me, out of it a sense of duty. She's had a lawyer, Mr. Jones, who's advised her throughout. And it seems to me that the court has to look at the things that's happened to this lady. She had a job of some 3 years with the Salingers. She doesn't have that job anymore. This isn't a wealthy lady, Your Honor. Well, you worked for 3 years with a family who, by and large, was pretty happy with you. But I would suspect, and I think it's reasonable, that when this case comes into your life, things happen and things change. We've all seen what this has done to our lives and to witnesses' lives, which is even more important. The Salingers, she said, have not been happy with the fact they've come about. The fact that Mr. Darden brings out there's a gate out there is of no consequence. She's the housekeeper. The fact that gate may be closed on one day, that doesn't mean the press, she's not been a virtual prisoner in her home on occasions. She works out there perhaps 5 days a week. But when this case started, she had a son and a daughter, Your Honor. Her family wasn't torn asunder. And when she goes home to her daughter's house, the problems have started. The daughter says that you brought the press to us. The whole fact that we have this tape from Channel 34 is because the press found this lady. The court's read this statement Mr. Darden gave us. They said, in the community, we found her. This lady wanted anonymity. That's all she's ever asked for. She didn't ask to be thrust in the spotlight, and it's outrageous that she's been treated like some kind of a criminal when she is a witness in this case. It's outrageous. And so what happened is that she's out minding her own business last Friday. She is apparently accosted. She has a conversation with a lady. She then calls her lawyers. A declaration is done. And I went through certainly the key portions of that declaration, and specifically paragraph 7. It is not required that she believes that somebody's going to walk up or somebody threatens her with physical violence. She says she's afraid. She's afraid for her life. She's afraid for the safety of her family, that her daughter told her, if you go and testify in that case, I'm not going to be your daughter anymore, and you're not going to see your grandchildren anymore. And her daughter apparently meant it, because when her daughter came back from working in New York on Tuesday, Your Honor, Rosa Lopez was thrown out. Rosa Lopez spent the night in her car on Tuesday night. On Wednesday, she left the state. Now, to her everlasting credit, despite what the people think, this lady called on her own yesterday to Mr. Jones in the afternoon. And the court's aware of that because when I got a call at 5 o'clock, we made arrangements to bring her back here today. She's back. She was in another state. She has no place to live here. She doesn't have her daughter anymore. Her family's been torn asunder. And now we're being told that, well, gee, if you go to El Salvador, they'll know about you there. As though there's a reason. You know, if this is a case about the search for truth, why not let her testify? Why should her life be ruined? Some of us have to be here every day because this is our job. But she is an unwitting and unwilling participant. And it seems to me where this court has discretion and wisdom and judgment, This is the kind of call that we ask you to make. This is a witness, and the message we send to all these witnesses will set the standard for how people should be treated and whether or not they want to become involved in this system. Rosa Lopez's testimony will rise or fall on what she has to say on the critical events of June 12, 1994. The people seem to want to fight that. They seem to be very afraid of what she may say at that time. She's a witness, and Mr. Simpson's behalf, we have to bring this motion. If a witness says to us, and her declaration says, I am going to El Salvador and I'm not coming back. And it seemed to me that perhaps the most relevant testimony was a couple of Mr. Darden's very key questions at the end. He asked, you have great respect for Judge Iida. She said, yes, I do. I like him very much. But I'm not coming back because I've had it. And Judge, if you put yourself in her place, who'd want to come back and be subjected to all kind of questions? When all you come in and say is, look, I'm afraid for my safety. Who among us can say she's not telling the truth? None of us can do that. She says, I have nothing to do with this case except I'm a witness. And I'm afraid for my safety. I want to go back to my homeland where I have a home. I don't have a home in Los Angeles. I don't want to reveal to you where I had to go the other day when I flew back here tonight. And I want to go back to that place. My bags are packed for over a month, she says. And then we bring in a travel agent who she's dealt with. I think it's of no moment she has a reservation on March or whatever. Travel agent said she made a reservation for February 15th she couldn't keep. And we know that her daughter was out of town. When her daughter came back, the split occurred, and now she wants to go. But in the final analysis, it's Rosa Lopez who this court has to believe. If she says, I'm not coming back, I'm leaving, I think you can believe that. Here's a woman who didn't have to come back today. That's the point. They can never get over this point. We did not know where she was until she called Mr. Jones yesterday afternoon because of the split with her daughter. She came back on her own and said, I will come, I will testify, I want to resolve it today. But again, Judge, is it her fault that everything in this case takes much longer than we anticipate? So do we say to Rosa Lopez, okay, you're a good citizen. If you felt the duty, you came back. Now I'm going to make you stay here till Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday? She doesn't want to do that, and that's not fair. So I would ask the court to grant this motion. And I asked her, and Darden asked her, and she said not only does she doesn't want to come back on Monday, she doesn't want to come back in 3 months. The court's aware of the law. If we lose her, she's a relevant, important witness, in this case, in a search for justice. So I don't know how we can afford to lose her under the circumstances. But on the other hand, I don't think this court can lock her up. This is a voluntary witness who came back here on her own with the understanding she said, I want to get this over with in one day and go on with my life. And she has a right. She is a free citizen that she should be able to go where she wants to go under the circumstances. She's made her claim, and I trust the court will believe what she's had to say, that she's in fear. And I think the court can read and look at this woman. You saw her tearful testimony with regards to what she had to say. This woman is afraid. She doesn't want to be here. She didn't want a picture blasted all over the place. She had a different conception of what it meant to have your testimony taken. And she thought, I believe, that it was the judges, the lawyers, and whatever. But even when she got here today and saw that, the fact that there was a camera here, she still said, I'm willing to try and testify. But I want to testify today. I don't want to have to come back in the future. I want to say what I have to say and get it over with. She said she's under great stress. And also I'd point out to the court that the testimony unrebutted is that there's a problem of a history of heart ailments with this family. She has every reason to want to go to El Salvador. That's her home. It's the only home she has in the world, Your Honor. She's lost her job. She has no money. She has no place to stay. She has a son who's entombed in a temporary grave. I mean, what more do we want? She has a sister who is ill. Now, who among the prosecution can be so heartless as to stand up here and say, well, let's make her come back? Well, maybe there's one or two, but we'll see. But at any rate, it seems to me that in this situation, this lady has made her case, Your Honor, and we should be permitted to have a conditional examination. I do not think that she'll be seen again. And I don't know who could blame her under those circumstances. And the alternative is for this court to hold her against her will. Where's she going to stay? Her daughter won't take her in because of this case. Her daughter feels that there's fear. Now, you may believe that the daughter's fear is unreasonable, but if somebody believes that, Your Honor, you can't talk them into that. We have to consider the totality of the circumstances. And I think the proponent has met their burden. And I would respectfully ask the court that to make a decision to allow us to preserve her testimony. And keep this in mind, Your Honor. And what we do with regard to Rosa Lopez, it says something to all the witnesses who would otherwise come forward in any case in America. It says they're going to be treated with some kind of dignity. They're going to be treated fairly. They're not going to be treated as though they've lied about every little thing. If somebody says they want to go to El Salvador because they want to get away from this case, I don't know how unreasonable that is. And they want to give their testimony and not have to come back down here again and be subjected to this.
Mr. Cochran, would you address what appear to the court to be several contradictions in the record as far as Ms. Lopez is concerned? For example, the declaration that she has been harassed by the news media, and that it is this harassment that is the major component of her desire to leave the United States, yet she voluntarily consents to a interview with Ms. Villapando. She indicates an interest in the various television coverages, that she recognizes some of the television reporters here. And I have to tell you, I don't know who that woman was. I don't watch court TV. I don't have cable TV.
All right.
I had no idea who that person was. She knows who it is. That she saw that as a personality, somebody that she liked and enjoyed. It shows, to me, an interest in the press and not a fear of the press. The contradictory statements that she has made about when she is going to leave the country. The statement made by Carl Jones that as early as last week, that he had no knowledge that his client was going to be leaving the country, or that she had expressed anything like that. The contradictory statement to the Salingers that she was going to immediately leave to go to El Salvador, which she did not do. The contradictory statements that she made today regarding when she made the reservations to leave, the fact that she did not disclose the reservations in March. In fact, she denied having any other arrangements. I mean, there are a number of contradictions in what she has said, and that concerns me about the credibility of her statement that she now intends to go today no matter what.
All right, let me address those, please. Thank you. With regard to the press, first of all...
I think there's probably 3 or 4 more.
Well, feel free to. It's fine.
It's just off the top of
Okay,
my head.
whatever number you want to bring, I'm more than happy to answer them. First of all, I think that even Your Honor has friends in the press, people that you trust. Well, you did at one point, Your Honor. Let me point this out. You can trust... I'm not trying to hurt the guy, but all of us have people that we may respect or admire in the press at one time or other. Even wise people make mistakes regarding the press. As I understood it, and we saw the tape, let's just take that incident, and I want to put it in perspective of where it should be. She's sitting on a bench back there with her lawyer. She feels safe. Kristen Jeanette Meyer walks past. She recognized and said something like, "You're pretty. I've seen you on television," something like that. This lady, I think there's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't mean that you hate all the press. Kristen Jeanette Meyer did not have a camera running after her, asking her a bunch of questions. She was walking past. Miss Lopez instituted that. Does that mean she didn't want to go to El Salvador? Does that mean that she doesn't have a fear of what the press has done to her life? I think not, Your Honor. I mean, if you look at that for what it is, that was one person she recognized with her lawyer sitting, hopefully in the sanctity and some safety in this particular courtroom, when she says, "You're a pretty lady on television, I recognize you." Now, the fact that some of us may not see court TV or know who Kristen Jeanette Meyer was, she recognized her. In response to Mr. Darden's question, she said she'd seen some portion of the preliminary hearing. But I don't see any contradiction between that and the fact that she is terrified or concerned about the press and what the press has done to her life, what the press has done to her daughter, what her daughter thinks the press is going to do. I mean, Judge, you perhaps, and we have become used to the press outside your doors all the time. But for regular people who have their regular lives, they don't like that. They'd like to go when they please. And when it brings problems in the family, that's what we're talking about. So let's just take that, and I think that's an answer with regard to that. Now, secondly, you asked a question about Mr. Jones' statement. Mr. Jones, as I understand it, talked to her as often as he could in talking to her. And at one point, and I've never heard any testimony about whether or not he said that or not, but let's assume that that was at some point in February he said he didn't know.
Well, if you recall, she acknowledged under cross-examination by Mr. Darden that she had heard Mr. Jones say on the 17th that he had been in contact with her and had no knowledge of her any plans to leave.
All right.
That's the state of the record.
Okay,
as I
that's fine.
recollect.
And we did not, what I meant, we didn't call Mr. Jones on this issue, that we'd be
Well,
here
that
all
was an
day.
acknowledgment by the
Right.
client, and
All right.
he's speaking for the
Right.
client.
In that connection, in the court recall, there had been some earlier declarations in this regard. On the 17th of February, because this addresses that issue, so a declaration prepared by Mr. Jones in talking with his client, with a Spanish interpreter there, where she spells out this fear. The 17th was apparently a pretty frightening day, by all accounts for her. She had hidden out again, Judge. She had lost the job now with the Salingers. Keep that in mind. I mean, she loses the job. I mean, does that mean anything to any of us? That she's lost her livelihood. She's lost the job. She's at home at her daughter's house. Her daughter is saying, you get involved in this case, and you're out of here. Channel 34 says they go out and they do a community service. They find her. And all these cameras and everything then show up. There was no interview as such. As I understood it, Ms. Villalpando gained her confidence or whatever and came inside the house and then tried to talk to her. She then went on camera. Rosa Lopez did not go on camera. Ms. Villalpando then talked to her and made this statement. And some members of the press perhaps are nicer than others. But there's no interview by Rosa Lopez. And again, she's never said, I hate all members of the press. What she said is, I hate what the press has done to me and my family. There's some nice people out there, Your Honor. And I look back and I see some of the nice ones. But collectively, it's what they become when they want to get a story. And Rosa Lopez is a hot story. So that with regard to that, I see that of no particular moment or consequence. Now, with regard to Rosa Lopez as a witness on the stand, the court had an opportunity to observe her. And certainly, you have in mind her testimony. This lady said she had made reservations through this company, Pan Americana. I heard that, and I went and checked that, and she gave the name of the street, and absolutely she was right. She had said at one point in Mr. Darden's examination that she'd made some reservations, and in fact she hadn't made those reservations. But from the 17th, when she did that declaration, she's always been clear, I am leaving by tomorrow. And the reason why I thought Zulema Iida was important was, Judge, again, you have to look at Rosa Lopez and look at her history. Some people, Judge, are not frequent flyers. They don't go and buy their tickets a month in advance and stick by it. Some people try to get the best rate. Some people, it seems to me, according to Ms. Iida, make reservations and don't always comply with them. Some people, when flights are available and they say they're going to go, they do it and do it that day. Now, we know from Ms. Iida, she now has reservations to that effect. She was out of town until 1:30 this morning, Your Honor. She slept for no more than 2.5 hours, then met with lawyers, and has been here since before 9 o'clock this morning. So the court has to consider the totality of her testimony with regard to whether or not she's impeached on any point or whatever. The court saw the things that she had to say. The purpose of this hearing was not to tear into Rosa Lopez's day, as the court understands. The purpose of this hearing was to determine whether or not her testimony should be preserved based upon what she has to say. And I keep coming back to the point. She is the one that one has to listen to, not the DAs, not any other witness. She is the one, when she says to you, I like you, I respect you, but I'm not coming back here. I want to get out of here. Darden asked her several different ways. Well, what if the DA's office, or what if the judge, out of his budget, pays for her to put her up? And that's an admission, Judge. This lady has no place to stay. She has no place to go by virtue of this case. And so we're going to tar and feather her? I mean, it frightens, it shocks me. Think of the message we want to send around America to witnesses, to this innocent lady who comes in here and wants to go to El Salvador to rebury her son, to look after her sick sister, to go to the only place she has a home, to go to her homeland where she is franchised when she's been thrown out of her daughter's home, and come here on her own from another state. I think she deserves a lot more credit than it seems to me she's been given. If the court will remind me of the other issue, I perhaps didn't get it. I'll be glad to respond to it.
Well, just the various contradictions that she had conceded.
Well, I don't know that she concealed these contradictions. Your Honor.
She conceded the contradiction.
Oh, I'm sorry, conceded. I think with regard to, Judge, there's a jury instruction which talks about innocent misrecollection or witnesses. I want you to compare these misrepresentations or any concealments or any conceding things she's conceded with the fact this lady stands before you and tells you, I don't want to come back, I don't want to be here, I came here voluntarily today. Now, who can quarrel with that? That's exactly what she did. They ask all these questions about somebody from the Star. whose name has surfaced in other investigations. How credible is that? If she wanted to make money in this case, she has no job. She has no place to stay. She spent one night this week in a car. If a Star reporter offered her $5,000 with the testimony she has to give in its explosive nature, don't you think she would take that? This is an honorable woman. She does not deserve to be maligned. She does not deserve to be treated this way. If they could come in and show she was going to get some money for this, it'd be something else again. But that's preposterous to ask her a question about billboards in her country. And the fact that we have CNN around the world is of no moment. What they don't seem to realize, because they have homes, is she has a place to go to there. She doesn't have a place to go to here. They're not going to do anything for her. So it's easy to beat up on somebody in court. But it's something else, again, to have some compassion for people. And then, excuse me, it's easy to beat up on someone in court. But it's something else, again, to have some compassion for one's fellow man, and especially somebody who's not really a party. We're all locked together in this case until the end. But Rosa Lopez is certainly more transitory in this. And whether or not, and all we're asking, is given everything. You consider it as like all the witnesses. Judge, you know, if you think about witnesses who've been impeached, in this case, if I started totaling up witnesses, some of them wouldn't even come back in here. This lady is an honorable lady who has nothing to gain or whatever, except she wants to go on with her life. That's all she said to you. If you have any doubt about it, you look her in the eye and ask her that. And she's told you that. She's told Darden that. So I'm asking you to allow her to give her testimony. And I understand the time crunch. But I also understand, in addition to being a lawyer, I want to be a human being about this, about what this lady did. And I know when I spoke to you last night at 5 o'clock, at that time I didn't know where she was. And when I found out where she was, I indicated to you I was going to get her back here, one way or the other. And you indicated to me to call the district attorney's office, and I followed, and I called Darden and told him that night. So there's an honorable quality about this lady. And I hope that's shown through in her testimony. And I ask the court to consider it. If you have any other questions, I'll be glad to try and address them.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Cochran. Mr. Darden.
You know, as I sat here listening to Mr. Cochran, I wondered, are we talking about the same Rosa Lopez? There are, I'm sorry, did you say something? Okay. Mr. Cochran must have had a hard time keeping a straight face as he argued the credibility of Rosa Lopez. The issue at this point isn't whether we should hold a 1335 a conditional examination. The issue is why should we hold a conditional examination. Rosa Lopez has taken the witness stand. She took the oath. She promised to tell the truth. And she did the exact opposite. She told us that she'd made reservations to leave. We called and checked. We found out that she hadn't. And when we confronted her with it, she admitted that she had lied. She told us that she was going to make reservations. I'm not sure that she has, or that she did today. She told us that she hadn't made reservations to leave at some other time. But now we find out that on February 21st, that she booked a round-trip ticket to El Salvador. And what's important about the February 21 date, Your Honor, is that 4 days before, on February 17, she signed a declaration under penalty of perjury saying she was leaving and she wasn't coming back, saying she feared for her life. You tell me, what's going on here? Talking about contradictions. There are contradictions here, contradictions made under penalty of perjury. You can't believe anything Rosa Lopez says, I think, at this point.
Was it the declaration on the 17th that says that she's leaving? I thought that was one that did not say that she was leaving. Let me just double check there.
The February 17th declaration.
I stand corrected.
Okay.
I stand
That's right.
corrected. There were other declarations that did not say that.
Okay. The February 17th declaration says, I've decided to return to my native El Salvador on February 25. That's February 17. And on February 21, she makes a round trip, a reservation for a round trip ticket for March. Okay. We would certainly like to see Rosa Lopez testify in front of the jury. And if what we've seen today is a sneak preview of the defense in this case, then obviously we're looking forward to it. But Ms. Lopez makes these claims and allegations about Broncos and Detective Furman and all these other things. And they are important things, even if her account is untrue. But they're the kinds of things that a jury ought to hear, especially given the complete and total lack of credibility that Rosa Lopez has. They haven't proven that she's about to leave. What we found out about Rosa Lopez is that her accounts, her views, her positions, and her testimony changes with the wind, Your Honor. It changes with the seconds. It changes with time, and she will change and modify that testimony and her view and her position at any given moment, depending upon who is asking the questions. There is no credible evidence in this record to suggest that she is about to leave this jurisdiction. In fact, the most credible evidence in this record is that she is going to purchase a round-trip ticket in March of 1995. I would ask that the court take note of her cooperation with the defense in this case. She told Ms. Villapando that she called her attorney on many, many occasions. Even when they didn't return her call, she still called. And when she left the state, she called to tell him where she was and to tell him that she would be here. She booked a round-trip ticket for March. She'll come back. She says that she feels as if she has a duty to tell the truth and to assist this defendant. Rosa Lopez will be back. And I'll tell you, Your Honor, if you don't hold a conditional examination today, she probably won't leave the city of Los Angeles. She probably won't even visit the ticket agency or the travel agent. There's nothing, no credible evidence, no credible testimony in this record to suggest that she is about to leave, and the motion ought to be denied. There are many, many contradictions in the record that I could speak on, in which my clerks from Southwestern Law School were careful to plot out for me so that I could argue those points to the court, but I sense that the court is aware of those contradictions. How can the court accept this witness's testimony? How can the court find her credible? How can we possibly believe that she is going to do what she says? Even as we stand before the court now and argue this issue, I suspect that in the media right now that they have uncovered other contradictions in the testimony that she has given today. The defense has failed to carry the burden, to carry the day on this issue, Your Honor, and we didn't beat up on her. We didn't treat her like they treated our witnesses. We didn't treat them like they treated Ron Shipp, and we didn't ask her about her drinking problems or her other personal business. Okay? We treated her in a dignified manner. This is a court of law. Mr. Simpson's freedom is at stake. The people's right to a fair trial and the public safety is at stake. Given the information she claims to have, and given their complete failure to sustain their burden under 1335 and 1336, the court ought to deny the motion. Ms. Lopez is on her own, as she should be. I'm sure that she will return to her daughter's house. I doubt that she ever slept on the street or did any of that at all. We know where she's been, and she's probably been playing the slot machines and having a good time. And I've indicated to Mr. Cochran that if the DA's office can assist in any reasonable manner in helping them to keep their witness or to stay in contact with their witness, then we're happy to do that, because this is a search for the truth. And we think we know what the truth is, and we think the jury is going to find the truth at the end of this, and we want to help. We want to help the defense, but not this way. It's unfair. It's wrong.
Mr. Darden, let me ask you to address this issue. On the other side of the ledger, having noted the contradictions, the record also indicates that she was, in fact, out of the state of California until the early morning hours of today, that she voluntarily returned, which shows her good faith, and the information that I received that we stipulated to in a sidebar was she was, in fact, outside of the jurisdiction of the state of California. So don't I have to also take into consideration the fact that she did voluntarily come back, she was beyond the jurisdiction of the court, And shouldn't I take that into consideration in evaluating the truthfulness of her statement that she's going to leave? Question number one. Question number two is, do you want to roll the dice? Say, for example, I accept your argument that based upon my analysis of the credibility of the testimony of the witnesses here, that there has not been established that the witness is about to leave the state, as is required under 1337 sub 4. Let's assume that I accept that argument and deny the hearing. We go forward and she does in fact leave the jurisdiction and goes to a place where she is beyond service of the Interstate Compact on witnesses. Let's assume that the worst happens as far as Mr. Simpson is concerned and he is found guilty of some felony serious crime. Then we have an appellate issue on the abuse of discretion by this court failing to grant a 1335, when the only downside is that if she is unavailable under we have to have a 240 hearing somewhere further down the line to see if she's still in fact unavailable at the time that the defense case goes on.
If anything, the court should consider her return to this jurisdiction to testify today as proof positive of her willingness to assist the defense in any manner that she can. And I think that's probably about all that it's worth. And as far as rolling the dice is concerned, Your Honor, we believe that the record supports a finding that they have failed to carry their burden. The court does have discretion. There are many contradictions and inconsistencies in the testimony of Ms. Lopez and Ms. Lopez's testimony as opposed to the second witness. And this testimony, all of this testimony, we believe will support the court's finding that a conditional examination is inappropriate under these circumstances. We don't see it as an issue of rolling the dice or not. It's not a roll the dice issue. We fought hard on this issue because we believed this person to be, and I don't want to offend anyone this afternoon, but we did not believe she was a credible individual. We felt that the jury ought to hear her testify. That is, if they really want to take her testimony. That is, as opposed to creating an appellate issue in this case. At any event, Your Honor, the record, we think, fully supports the court's finding, if the court is inclined to so find that a conditional examination is not necessary. I don't think that Rosa Lopez will miss out on testifying again in these proceedings in front of the whole world. I think she'll be back. I think if Mr. Jones asks her to come back, or if Mr. Simpson should ask her to come back, I think she will. I'm sure she will. I'm not sure they're going to want her to come back, but I think if they ask that she will. And once again, the people are prepared to offer some assistance to the defense in terms of bringing her back if they really...
And the people maintain their position at this time that they will not allow, or they object to calling Rosa Lopez out of order so that she can testify in front of the jury.
I'm sorry, Your Honor, I didn't hear at the beginning.
Do you maintain your position that you would object to calling her out of order?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you, counsel.
If the prosecution is so confident that Rosa Lopez is not a credible witness, then let me reiterate our offer that we made earlier, we just asked them about. If they're so convinced, let her call her in here and ask her, Judge, if we can put her on the stand Monday morning. She can leave Monday night. Let her testify before this jury on Monday. Since they think they're so proud of what they can show, let her testify. They want to search for truth. Let them do that. They're not going to do that, Your Honor, because we'd asked them that before. And I think it's really the height of arrogance and really unfair. Mr. Darden knows that she was not in Las Vegas, Nevada. Her flight went through there. She couldn't get it through flight. That's why she flew last night till 1:30. And how disingenuous is it for a lawyer to stand up here and talk about slot machines when the only flight she could get was through Las Vegas to get to L.A.? That's preposterous.
That doesn't that argument doesn't carry any weight because
It may not, but it
we know
offends me because it shouldn't have happened, Your Honor. And so I have to, I feel duty-bound to say that. Please allow me that. Now, having said that, let me get back to the issues. You put your finger on it directly. The prosecution, in their zest to win, their obsession to win, well, they don't care about rolling any dice. In this case, they're not worried about that. You are the judge, and you're the one who has to be wise because it's your discretion who's at stake. What we're saying to you, you saw this witness who came back on her own. She didn't have to do that. She doesn't want to testify. She didn't get anything out of this. And if she doesn't come back, if she does what she says she's going to do, and I find her credible on that. She said she'd come back today. She did that. She says she's not coming back after today, and I believe that. You heard those particular questions, which were the most important ones here today, even though she had respect for you because of what it's done to her life. And, you know, for them to say that she didn't sleep on the street, that is the evidence from this case. That's what she testified about, and we know she then left this jurisdiction, and the whole evidence is she's had this problem with her family. It just seems to me to defy credulity and to be the height of insensitivity for them to talk about this. They talk about this as a witness. A witness. She's not a party to this case. She should be treated with some amount of dignity, and I think the court is doing that and looking at all the facts in this case. When you do that, I think we've made our burden. If you look at any case where a witness has been away, came back on their own with no place to stay, and says, I'm not going to be here afterwards, and you have a man charged with the most serious of offenses, what more can we do under the circumstances than to make the presentation we've made? She's here because we made arrangements to get her back and because she called us, not because they did anything. If they really don't think she's credible, let her come before the jury. Otherwise, let us have our 1335 and let's resolve this matter and move on, Your Honor.
When the Court of Appeals takes a look at this record, they'll look at the record as it stood today. And regardless of what may happen in the future, but as the record stands today, how can you find her credible? How can we possibly believe that she is about to leave? She has lawyers telling her, hey, it's okay. It's okay to go back to El Salvador.
Well, the thing that troubles me the most, Mr. Darden, is the fact that she was, in fact, out of the state today.
That's what Mr. Cochran has told us, yes. Okay. And she's back. People come and go all the time, Your Honor. She has come and gone from here to El Salvador, what, 27, somewhere between 27 and 50 occasions. We've called down to El Salvador. Okay. She can't hide from the media, and from what I understand from our conversations today, they're a lot more ruthless.
This is argument,
okay, that is the media. That is the media is a lot more ruthless down there than they are here, as I understand. There are billboards down there saying, if you see Rosa Lopez, call this number. We learned today, Your Honor, that... Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Hey.
Well, Mr. Cochran, it's interesting. I'll hear it.
Sure,
I can make
okay.
the distinction.
There was a Rosa Lopez sighting in San Salvador a short time ago.
I'm not surprised about
Okay,
that.
and they hounded and followed this woman for quite some time until they finally realized that she was not this Rosa Lopez. The reporters our office spoke to today say they are waiting. They are waiting for her to land. She's big. Maybe bigger than you, Judge. I don't know. But okay. But she can't run from the press, and none of us can. But the record still is clear. There is no credible evidence in the record, no credible proof that she is about to leave. You can't believe anything she says. She contradicts herself. I mean, there are inherent conflicts in her own testimony, Your Honor. And you don't have to beat up on her or badger her to bring these conflicts out. She conflicts herself. You know, what else can we do? We have a right to a fair trial.
It is a contradictory record. You are absolutely right.
Yeah. And so, and under the circumstances, the court certainly has discretion given these circumstances, and we don't see it as an issue of rolling the dice. We're in it for the long haul, and we think that the court, that should the court deny this motion, that the court will be standing on sound legal grounds.
All right. Thank you, counsel.
Last thing I'd like to say, Your Honor, is we don't see this as anything funny at all. The fact that there may be press or he made some call down to El Salvador, and sending messages like that, I think, are very, very unfortunate. If everybody around the world is watching this, how we conduct ourselves seems to be important. And what I'm concerned about is this particular witness. This lady believes her life is in jeopardy. And what we do has a lot to do with that. And it seems to me we take
Counsel,
that,
the issue goes
that
back
seriously.
to 1337 sub
Yes.
4, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
That's the issue.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, this is an interesting situation. This is an abuse of discretion standard that I have to apply here in finding whether or not a conditional examination is necessary or required under these circumstances. We have a witness who, on the positive side of the ledger, was in fact, and I believe was in fact, out of the state of California until the early morning hours this morning, was in fact out of the state. She did in fact return and cooperatively after the request by her attorney, Mr. Jones, and by the defense counsel here. She has stated unequivocally to the court today that she intends on leaving tomorrow. On the other side of the ledger, we have the fact that the reason that she has given the press harassment is contradicted by her cooperation with KMEX Channel 34, speaking to their reporter Villapando, and her friendliness with the court TV personnel. It seems to contradict her fear of harassment by the press. Also, she has indicated in her declaration dated on the 17th of February that she is leaving on the 25th, when in fact she had reservations for mid-March to return on a round-trip ticket as well. So the issue is whether or not her claim, the court deems credible her claim that she is going to leave the jurisdiction and not return any time during the course of this trial, and will not voluntarily return, and in fact she is going to go to a jurisdiction where securing her attendance here in California will be difficult, if not legally impossible. I have to balance also the materiality of the proffered testimony, which is that she observed, my understanding from the allegations is that she observed Mr. Simpson's Bronco parked at his residence at a time that is inconsistent with the prosecution theory of the case. Balancing the materiality of that proffered testimony with the factors that I've discussed here, the cautious resolution of this is to grant the motion for a 1335.
Thank you.
We'll take a 10-minute recess and then we'll commence the hearing.